So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get started with our next session, which features Jason Grimm talking about full trucks for higher profits, transportation collaboration among farmers and the food hubs in the Midwest. Jason is the executive director for Iowa Valley RC&D in Amana. He joined Iowa Valley RC&D in 2009 as the food systems director when he launched the Community Food Systems program. He's led more than 50 farmer workshops and provided personal one-on-one mentorship to many beginning farmers over the years. Jason led the development of Iowa Valley RC&D's 6-acre Grow Johnson County farm. He's acted as a value chain coordinator, connecting producers to each other, to markets, institutions, and other networks within the food system. Jason is trained as a Harmonized Gap auditor and Produce Safety Alliance grower trainer for FSMA. He serves as a board member of the National Young Farmers Coalition, and he also runs his own business, Grimm Family Farm, outside of Williamsburg, producing dry beans, produce, and pastured poultry. Help me welcome Jason.
All right, Mallory, and expect a lot of participation. So this is about a SARE partnership grant that our organization received back in 2020. That's when we started it. The worst time to start a grant, though, was in 2020. So this project was actually a pretty wide partnership with partners in University of Minnesota, Dunwoody College of Technology, which is also based in Minneapolis, and staff at Iowa State, and ourselves. We had kind of 4 things that we wanted to achieve throughout the project. One was to conduct some interviews and surveys with some farmers and food hubs in our 2 states to evaluate their, what do they know about their transportation and delivery costs. We wanted to do then another survey of their more farmers, like the vendors for those food hubs, understand some data collection of actually like costs that farmers were taking on as part of their transportation, and then designing an actual cost estimation tool that farmers or food hubs could use to determine the fair amount to charge each other if they're collaborating when they're delivering products with each other. These were the different farms and food hubs that we had as our primary partners on the project. So Sprout, Goodacre, Shared Ground. Sprout and Goodacre are 2 food hubs in Minnesota. Shared Ground is a farmers cooperative that actually they act like a distributor, like a food hub as well. And then Cala Farm was one of the other farms in Minnesota. Here in Iowa, North Iowa Fresh and Farm Table Delivery were our 2 food hubs, and then Wallace Farms and Organic Greens were our farms. Wallace Farms and Organic Greens both, though, have a lot of their own distribution and distribute product for other farmers. I'm going to skip over this. We already did some introduction of myself, but I guess I'm curious about, do the 2 of you know much about the cost of your transportation? Do you have any idea what it costs to drive down the road every mile when you're delivering a product for your farm or business? Yep, at least cover your expenses. I know Eat Greater Des Moines owns your own transportation, but like, what do you use to transport? Do you have your own like special delivery vehicle or just a personal vehicle? Oh, okay. Okay, cool. And I know Eat Greater Des Moines does a lot of other collaboration with others to move product around that you're coordinating right now. But so I'm going to sort of bum you out with one question is I can't tell you really what your cost is per mile or transportation. We can tell you about the variables that many of the farms and food hubs and that we interviewed, what they identify as variables. So they identified the cost of the driver and the vehicle. They identified the transportation or the insurance or ownership costs of the vehicle. And they also identified the wear and tear or the maintenance on the vehicle. The maintenance on the vehicle is the hardest thing for them to really think about breaking that down per mile. Most farmers are trying to think about it, tracking that on an annual basis or a quarterly basis, and then trying to evaluate how many miles that they put on during that period and breaking that out per mile there. So we first did interviews with those partner farms and food hubs that were part of our project. And this is just a summary of what the farmers identified that they lacked the time and knowledge to adequately determine their delivery costs that they have involved in when they're making their deliveries and actually allocate that cost to their customers. Many farmers expressed that they lack storage on their farms, resulting in immediate transportation of their product. So meaning that they couldn't hold product to wait for another delivery option. So they, as soon as harvested or washed and packed it, they're literally on the road to the next customer. And thus, they didn't want to risk loss of product or something. And then farmers shared that they struggle to find someone who's trustworthy to drive for them so that they can focus on more of their on-farm operations and scale their businesses. So many people feel like I don't trust anyone to drive my vehicle, whether an employee or whoever, so I just do it. Food hubs identified there are high operating costs of their trucks due to less than truckload deliveries. So two of the food hubs we interviewed rented versus their vehicles or lease their vehicles instead of trying to always have their to avoid some maintenance expenditures because it's on the company that owns the vehicle to take care of that and be in charge of it. Many of them just found that we can just take it to them and they deal with it instead of us having to find the mechanic, et cetera. And yeah, all the food hubs still were finding that their trucks weren't always full. So they were finding that they had a high operating cost because they weren't using the full capacity of those vehicles. Food hubs identified frequent breakdowns and reliability of truck created additional costs, whether just lack of the ability to make a delivery or just additional time to deal with those maintenance breakdowns. Many hubs expressed that they often made deliveries when their trucks were not full, and thus it was inefficient with their fuel use. Food hubs expressed the need for refrigeration on delivery vehicles to reduce waste and help maintain the quality of their products. And then they just talked about some of the social impacts is that a lot of their drivers are putting a lot of time in because they're long days and that it really affects and creates, often they have a lot of driver burnout because of that. Many of the food hubs it's kind of a revolving door of drivers. So then after we did the interviews, then we worked with the 4 food hubs that were involved in the project. They sent out surveys for us to their vendors. Then we sent out surveys through Iowa and Minnesota listservs and other networks. We had 32 farmers that participated in that survey. 77% of those farmers mentioned that they provide transfer service, like they deliver their own products to their customers. 60% of them said that they usually spend about 5 hours a week on the road doing their own deliveries. And farmers said that their vehicle capacities were at like during the peak season, they were like maxing out what they could fit in their vehicles versus in the off season, their vehicles were pretty much empty because they weren't delivering as much product. And they did not pay themselves for the costs of them driving their own vehicles. They said, yes, I don't know how much, and I know I'm not getting paid, which is usually happens in the field too. Some other things that came out of the surveys that we did. So we asked farmers about what they identify as obstacles to collaborate with other farmers or food hubs is just the lack of trust between a potential partner. They identified like not knowing whether they could trust that person. Can they get there on time? Are they going to handle my product appropriately? A lot of other things. They were concerned about losing some autonomy about their product. So just like selling product to a warehouse and then not knowing who the end customer is, they can't speak for their own goods if they hire someone else. Farmers are also hesitant because they do not want to sacrifice like the interaction that they get when they make a delivery to a customer. I think about that when I deliver to my restaurant customers. If I hired that all out, I don't get the chance to talk to those chefs about new products they have coming down the road, how to improve products, etc. Transportation collaboration. The farmers thought that it would take a lot of time and investment to kind of establish a partnership, like additional time for communication instead of just getting on the road and delivering it themselves. And then they just felt like they have lacked the time and ability to even see the overall benefits of collaboration, which and thus they think could help hinder their desire to actually collaborate at all. Some of the challenges that, or despite those challenges, we're still happy to see out of those 32 farmers that 12 of them do already collaborate with other farmers on transportation. Only 10% of them said that they don't see that there's any benefit to transportation at all or collaborating for transportation. Some of the major benefits that people identified is just reducing their transportation costs, their time savings on of their own, and then it could lead to collaboration on other things like bulk orders of stuff if farmers are collaborating around things, and other labor savings. Do you have any questions so far? Yeah, that and many of the farmers, I don't know if I put that in here. Many of the farmers felt too, I remember that I had it, that they just didn't have like adequate facilities, they thought, on their own farms to even have like other farms to bring them stuff for them to like collaborate and take that for multiple farms. They just felt like the infrastructure to support it just wasn't there. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about this tool that we've developed, which I call still in a beta version, because I know a lot about what's happening about shared transportation between food hubs around Iowa and farms. So I always test new methods and I keep on breaking it. The algorithms we have in the system are not super sophisticated yet. But the example that I'm going to show you, it works perfectly, and it's not super complicated. So these are some screenshots. I'll go into the live. It's just a Google spreadsheet with built-in codes. But the way that it works is down here in the bottom left-hand corner, it's not meant to be visible, but farmers or the food hub, whoever's using this tool, has to implement names of the farms that are participating or the businesses, the locations name. So they have to say Iowa Food Co-op as a place here in Des Moines, as a location that things either get picked up or dropped off at. And then they have to give a 911 like mailing address for that location that's connected to those two things. Once they do that, then this is an example that I built for Organic Greens, which is based in Kelowna. So James does a route every Wednesday where he goes from Kelowna to Des Moines to Ames to Cedar Rapids and back home. He actually will haul products for me to Central Iowa sometime to meet up with the farm table delivery food hub truck at the Iowa Food Co-op. So this is an example where James is leaving on the left. Organic Greens is going to pick up product at that's not the top line should say Organic Greens. So he's going to take product of his own. He's going to drop that off at the Hawk restaurant, which is in the East Village in Des Moines. The next line shows that he's going to pick up stuff. I guess in that example, we have multiple lines that he's taking to Hawk restaurant. The fourth line on this is showing that James is taking his own stuff that he's dropping off at Grinnell College as he's driving along Interstate 80 coming east or west. He's also coming to my house in Williamsburg, picking up product for me that's going to be dropped off at Iowa Food Co-op. When he's in Grinnell, he's picking up stuff from Middleway Farm and taking that to Iowa Food Co-op. And then when he is at Iowa Food Co-op, he's picking up product at Iowa Food Co-op and taking it back to Field to Family. So he's backhauling a product on his route back east. So this is the input system, that side of it. So once a farmer or a hub would put this information in there, they click on the button at the top that's called Find Optimal Route, and it develops this information. So it develops a routing. So stop 1, 2, and so forth down the map. It tells you the total distance, road miles of that route, and roughly the amount of time it should take to drive. That's the driving time, not like the time to go into the restaurant, drop it off, talk for 5 minutes, have a coffee, whatever, and get back on the road again. So at this time, people can then either on a computer, or this is mobile friendly, this Google spreadsheet, they can click on this link and it sends them to a Google map. So if you're on your phone, you could click on that map. It would already take you into your routing tool or your Google map on your app on your phone. You could have an untrained person that knows how to drive, has no idea where they're going, just follow the map and go to each stop in that right order. So all of those features were very important. The main objective of which all this stuff had to help with is we needed to figure out what percentage of all those costs throughout the route were for each business that was being involved. So Organic Greens, they were delivering their own product. So part of the expenses were for him alone. Some were mine because he was hauling my product. Some was for Jordan at Middleway, and some was for Field to Family. So he needed to determine what cost do I charge to others, and so I don't absorb all that cost myself. So right now it just tells you the cost percentage-wise. Or the next thing that we're trying to add in here is where a business can actually add their costs into it. So it could put in an hourly rate for the driver, so that you actually recoup that driver time, and then you would have to determine your own cost per mile. That would take in your transportation, fuel, your maintenance costs. But anyway, once you would have that, it would then tell you that 42% of your total costs you need to charge a Field to Family, or so much down the road. So as you can see, like he was only taking my product and James' product, or mine and Jordan's, a shorter distance of miles, so it was a lower cost, versus he was hauling a lot of stuff for his all the way to Des Moines, and then he was hauling stuff all the way back across the state for Field to Family. So before I jump into kind of the live thing, and I can show you where it works there, during this project we also partnered with University of Texas, a past colleague, Carolyn Kretschke, who used to be here at Iowa State. She teaches now at University of Texas there in Arlington. She actually had a Southern SARE project simultaneously at the same time, and they were studying some similar, they weren't developing a tool like this, but they were studying what tools are even out there for farmers to actually use for if they wanted to hire someone. So they surveyed, this isn't even close to the exhaustive list. They had students that went online, put in dummy shipments that they wanted to ship somewhere, and figured out the cost of what those things would be. Many of these things that are on this list, I know nothing about them other than C.H. Robinson. My wife works for this company, so I can talk bad about it as much as I want. But C.H. Robinson is based in the Twin Cities. They are a third-party logistics company. They have a tool where any company can build a load that they need hauled somewhere, and that load can get assigned to what's called an LTL carrier, a less than truckload company. So it could be just a pallet on the back of a truck with other stuff. And we had the students evaluate, like if they did stops, what would the cost per stop be? versus if they were just doing a whole pallet of stuff, what it would be costing. So we found that, well, none of these options provided refrigerated options. So there's limited options for farmers for that. And then many of the items that it just became exuberantly too expensive as you became more complex, especially when you added a lot more stops. And many of these providers, the scale of what they're using to haul stuff was not fitted kind of for the scale of most farmers. So they're using like a 40-foot trailer that isn't really conducive to go down a back road in a neighborhood or something. So we're kind of like trying to create a tool that's like Uber for farmers. I just wanted to kind of, this is a little out to date because Eat Greater Des Moines isn't on here. North Iowa Fresh is no longer North Iowa Fresh. It was absorbed by Prudent Produce. But these are the food hubs that are operating throughout Iowa, or at least where there's activity happening. And these are kind of the sales territories of those businesses, or the existing businesses when I created these maps. But what we're doing right now through a specialty crop block grant is we've taken a lot of the survey data that we learned from the partnership grant to kind of now, like, let's actually put this stuff on the ground. How do we build some of the infrastructure to help provide? How do we help incentivize or actually put some of the pieces together to actually create so that collaboration can happen? And so through two specialty crop grants, one that Iowa Valley RC&D has and one that Iowa Food Hub has, we have a project focused on routes and we have a project focused on nodes. Both of them are 3-year projects. And last winter, about this time is when we started this project. Right now, we have 2 routes that are happening every week. One is a north-south route that's in eastern Iowa that goes from Decorah down to a little bit south of Iowa City or Kelowna, and then they travel back north. So they're bringing product down, they're bringing product back, taking product back north. And then, as I mentioned, Organic Greens, their truck goes east to west every Wednesday. And so we wanted to start building a regular route so that we can actually, all the hubs can actually start collaborating. Like if a farmer wants to get Country View, or a hub wants to get Country View yogurt from West Union, Iowa, which is in northeast Iowa, to southwest Iowa, the way it happens every week is on the Fridays of the previous week. Iowa Food Hub brings it down to Field to Family, which is a node we've established in Iowa City. The following week, James Knisley's truck hauls that product to Des Moines, where he meets Farm Table Delivery, which is based in southwest Iowa, and then Farm Table Delivery takes that product rest of the way. Some of the cool, like I call it, where I think like this collaboration can help is actually help producers expand their geographic reach of their products instead of them like relying on. Many of us think like if you want to get across the state, then you're going to have to be on the road every day doing all that delivery. And we've been able to, here on the left, these are a bunch of vendors that we've been able to expand the reach of where their products are getting. So Farmer's Hen House is now the primary liquid and shell egg vendor for Luther College because that product is getting backhauled to Decorah. Old Capital Foods, they're a tofu company based in Iowa City. Their product is getting, all the way into northeast Iowa because of this partnership. My product, I mentioned this morning, gets all the way to western Iowa through this collaboration. Early Morning Harvest, which is based west of here in Panora, their flour and grain products are getting hauled all the way to northeast Iowa as part of this partnership. Dog Patch here in Des Moines, their product is getting all the way to northeast Iowa. And then Snowpack Foods, which is in Caledonia, Minnesota, their product is actually getting all the way down to central Iowa here and even further through this collaboration. Actually, at schools here in Iowa are relying on Snowpack right now as a vegetable option that's local during the winter months. So we've heard so much rave reviews from schools like, thank you for the local frozen vegetables right now. So I'm going to jump over here to the live thing unless anyone has any questions right now about like what's happening so far in Iowa or. We need a north and south route here in central Iowa. So our grants are paying, the routes grant is paying for actually time for James's truck, or it's paying for the driver's time and the cost per mile. And then our nodes grant is actually paying for, we call them mini grants to help pay for staff time at those nodes to be like who's in charge of like helping unload the vehicle, making sure the right stuff gets back on the vehicle. So we've created nodes in the Waterloo area, which is a new one. And then help support Field of Family with an existing location in Iowa City. We've kind of held off a little bit with creating new nodes because with all the influx of new dollars that are here to help support buying, because we want to really be strategic about where we locate them. I know Giselle's had comments with Aubrey about, helping support Eat Greater Des Moines because you're already sort of doing that. So, yeah. Yeah, it's in process. We just finished year one, really. Yeah. So this is the live tool. This is the tab where I can enter in like different businesses. Here, put Eat Greater Des Moines in. What's an address for you, Mallory? What's the zip code? 09? Okay. So I'm just going to edit this one a little bit. Let's say that instead of James picking up what he's back hauling for Field of Family, is coming to you to get that and taking it back east. He's picking that. So these are all drop downs too. It's a way to ensure that farmers, whoever, because the addresses need to be entered the same way every time. Otherwise, it throws off everything. They need to be formatted in the right way, and etc. So I've kind of built like where all the pickup spots. One thing in this example, so Flint Ridge is a group of Amish growers outside of Kelowna. So they have a warehouse that James sells and distributes their products. So he's going to go to Flint Ridge and pick up some stuff, but he's also loading his truck at his own facility with some of his products as well. He's taking things to Hawk, Grinnell College, Iowa Food Co-op, and back to Field of Family. Oh, I know what I did. See, this is why it matters how you got a comma. I deleted Hawk Restaurant out of my, so it's throwing me off. So now he's taking a lot of stuff to you, and then he's taking stuff back from me, Greater Des Moines. Depending on how complicated it takes longer or shorter amount of time to run the script in the background here. So this is the route that's supposed to be the shortest route based off Google Maps. So James is starting at his facility, going to Flint Ridge, coming to my house, which is just off of the interstate in Williamsburg, stopping at Grinnell College, then going to Middleway Farm to pick up product for Jordan. Next, he's going to Iowa Food Co-op to drop off his product, drop off my product, drop off Middleway Farms product, go to Eat Greater Des Moines, and then back to Iowa City to Field the Family, and then back home. And this would be like so here's where you could, if you're on your mobile device, you could click on this and send you directly to your app then. So, and where you could say start route or whatever that says. I don't know. That's the first time I've ever seen where it has a negative 13%. But you can see that he's a lot of costs are for Field to Family because he's taking product over to Eat Greater Des Moines for Field to Family, and then he's also bringing back to stuff to Field to Family from Eat Greater Des Moines. So a lot of the costs are theirs. But yeah, the next step that we're going to be adding, there's going to be another column next to this where we can actually give you like a dollar amount instead of requiring a farmer or food hub to do the calculation of how much I should charge. You could put in your variable cost and do that. And so the idea is that someone will be able to download this Google spreadsheet and save it in your Google Drive on your own personal Google Drive. And then you can add all the farms, names, etc., so that each time you go and reuse this tool, you don't have to re-enter everything. You just adjust it because a lot of routes always stay the same. So we didn't want to create an additional amount of time and then run. So this could be something you could do after each, before the route, or you could just use it afterwards to determine those expenses. So it's either a tool ahead of time. It's also a tool that I think could even help to tell, like, if a farmer says, can you haul this from point A to point B for me, that you could say, oh, this is how much it's going to cost prior to how much it after you would do it. So I find that, me personally, collaboration helps me a lot. Like right now, I actually had to use Speedy yesterday to ship product to Farm Table Delivery. It should get to them tomorrow. It cost me $40 to send 50 pounds worth of product to them, 2 boxes. I didn't have to leave my door. They came to my house, picked it up, and then took it. And then Speedy took the rest away. If I was hiring James, it'd probably be closer to $20 to do that. So there's probably a point where Speedy would have been cheaper depending on the value of the product, but in that situation, Speedy was still too expensive. So yeah, in my case, it's really nice because either James literally drives 2 miles from my house on his route that he takes, or I can see the interstate from my back window of my house. So I literally have to drive 2 miles to meet him at the interstate, or he has to drive 2 miles off of his route to meet me. It's not always a situation like that for others. That's why we want to try to create these nodes across Iowa. Farmers can aggregate product to or drop it off, and then hubs can pick it up, or other third parties that could be hired to do this work. So, yeah. Anyone have any questions? Well, it would help you to be able to say how much your cost is to go drive to Iowa Food Co-op and then meet James's truck or Iowa Food Hub's truck and then take that to each school or wherever the final end user is. Instead of right now, we're just all like sharing margin or whatever we call it, which in my mind is really hard for us to get wrapped around our head. But if we could actually look at it from the actual cost of transportation and not take it as a percentage of the total value of the product or something. In the past, many of the hubs were charging 10% up to 20% of the gross value of whatever they're hauling for you. And that could really vary. Like if someone's hauling maple syrup, the gross value of that is a lot different than a case of kale that can take up the same amount of space on the truck. So I feel like basing it on actual distance something's being hauled or number of places someone has to stop for you would be a more accurate measurement. So the problem is I'm not a scientist when it comes to code like this. So getting someone enough time and having enough dollars to pay those people has been the hardest part. My collaborator on this, Anuj Mittal, was he got his master's and his PhD from Iowa State, and then he was teaching in Minneapolis at Dunwoody College. While at the time we were wrapping this up, he took a job, and him and his wife moved back to India, to Bangalore, where they originally were from home. So it's been much harder to get his attention today because he's now working in private commercial world instead of teaching or anything. So he can't incorporate this as much in his daily life as he was able to at one time. So, but we're getting closer. The areas when I make it much more complicated, when I start adding in like multiple pickup spots along the route, and or a lot of backhauling stuff. Like right now, we just have one example, but if I had like James dropping off stuff going on the way back, it gets really confused on what order it needs to be picking up things, because now you're crossing things. So, but. Yeah. I think some other costs that you could put in there is there could be a column here, like a farmer or hub could put in how much time they're going to spend at each stop. And that time could be, because that doesn't really take that into consideration. That could be over a whole day. That could be 2 hours of just being outside the truck, unloading and loading things. And I think that time needs to be taken into consideration. So that's another variable. We didn't want to make it too complicated in the first phase. So, yeah. And we want the tool to be like as much like open source, like free, versus charging a fee or something to use it. So, and being on the online base, so it's a tool that could be used on the road that's being updated, like the routing tool. Instead of, we could have made this in Excel, but then it's really stuck to a desktop kind of situation instead of on a Google spreadsheet. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we have it there, because that's what I said I did in my final report. Actually, I know where it's faster way. Also, if you want to read our full like final report of all the interviews and stuff, that you can go to the SARE website and Google like the name of the project or Iowa Valley RC&D, and it'll pop up. Yeah, so here's a page that we had developed kind of for this project. And we also developed this little like video that's just like, it's like a screen share, just showing how it works. And supposed to be a link. It's not there, Mallory, but I can share it with you. Like if I can just share it to your email and then you just create a copy of it and save it on your Google Drive. Yeah. Any other kind of like thoughts about other applications like for something like this or? Yeah, yeah. That we're still relying on a like a transportation system of like infrastructure that the hubs have, that we're asking the hubs to kind of go way out of their own like region to do this distribution. When Teresa and I originally wrote those proposals, we were hoping that we could find like just an LTL company that's out there that we could hire to do these routes instead of requiring it to still be on the backs of the food hubs. Like I feel like there's a business opportunity for someone that could have a fleet of vehicles that's just driving all over the state, hauling product with some kind of broker or person in the middle, organization in the middle that's helping like guide them about you need to pick up this here, or that organization does that themselves. Because right now many of the food hubs have unreliable transportation or too small of vehicles, or all the vehicles do not match up with each other. I remember once when Farm Table Delivery, their first truck had steps on the back. And so two trucks literally could not back up to each other because there were steps in the way. That's not a problem today, but just things like that, I feel like are inefficiencies. Locations where nodes are, like if we had Field to Family doesn't have a dock, so literally things get taken off box by box instead of pallet by pallet. So my partnership, I had a partnership grant 2 years prior to this one, and that one was focused on an app that can actually use to track inventory throughout a collaboration network. So it's actually an app that the driver would use in their vehicle to say, I dropped off these 5 boxes at this location, and it would send that information back to whoever shipped it as a confirmation of delivery or stuff. That tool is almost too complicated for our system today. So Teresa and I were just talking last week about we need some way to make sure that everything gets unloaded at the right spot and we don't leave stuff on the truck. And so Teresa and I are going to try just like a colored round dots, like Iowa Food Hub gets the red dots this all the time and Farm Table gets these dots. And so we can make sure that everything gets, we were grabbing the right boxes because it's typically the same vendors, like Country View Dairy Yogurt is going to like 4 different places. But I'll be honest, like the first time we had any collaboration like this happening was in 2015, when I was running the Iowa Valley Food Co-op in Cedar Rapids. And we wanted to have products from Central Iowa to diversify our product offerings. And we wanted to have dairy products from Northeast Iowa. And so I knew that the other food hubs were like Ellen from Farm Table Delivery was driving all the way to Northeast Iowa to get yogurt with her truck. She was driving 5 hours, like almost round trip to get this product, maybe actually further than that. And so I said, well, why don't you just come to Cedar Rapids and you can get these products from that Iowa Food Hub will bring down. And then Iowa Food Hub, I have enough space I can cross dock it. We have a dock here. And so that's kind of the first collaboration. We just started that by a weekly phone call to figure out who needed what. And then the day after, we called each other and said, did everyone get everything that they're supposed to? And then kind of figure out, what do we do if you did not get it? Who's driving there next or whatever? So today I feel like we're like light years ahead of where we were then, but we still have light years to go. So yeah, they're trying to organize the truck in that way. They're also trying to organize in a way to manage the weight load in the back of the truck too, so they don't put too much weight on the one side or vice versa, or making sure that certain products aren't above or below another product. So like eggs, we don't want them on the bottom. We don't want them on the top either, because if they break, they'll drip all over everything else, but we also don't want them to get crushed. Things like that have happened in this collaboration. And the way that we've been handling frozen product is usually with coolers in the back of the refrigerator trucks. They're putting the frozen product in the cooler to maintain that's being frozen until where it needs to go to. But if there was there's trucks that where the front could be a freezer and the back can be a refrigerator. But we don't have anyone that has that ability yet. So, yeah. Dustin, we need some money for some infrastructure in Iowa. But yeah, this will be available, I think, right? The slides will? Yeah. Yeah.